Did you know that while some of America's top musicians were openly disparaging K-pop's global dominance on stage, there was an unexpected moment that instantly turned the tables? How could a single costume choice silence their harsh critics and steal all the attention from the grand American football stage? Number 8. The unanticipated shift of the Super Bowl stage. Becky G. In the high-stakes arena of global entertainment, the intersection of American sports culture and the skyrocketing influence of South Korean pop music has created unprecedented cultural collision points. During the intense media frenzy surrounding the Super Bowl halftime shows and its associated music festivals, the narrative of Western pop dominance faced a massive shift. Historically, the National Football League's championship game attracts over 100 million viewers globally, making its visual landscape the most fiercely contested marketing real estate in the world. When several Western media analysts and local artists questioned whether international pop acts possessed the authentic cultural leverage to share such a deeply American platform, the answer did not come through aggressive public relations statements or social media debates. Instead, it was delivered through the meticulous engineering of fashion diplomacy. The artist, known for high-energy collaborations and strong chart presence, found herself at the center of this dialogue when the sheer visual magnitude of the performance outfits completely redirected the public discourse. The clothing choices worn during these high-profile appearances did not merely serve as stage attire. They functioned as a calculated statement of artistic autonomy and global dominance. Millions of viewers who tuned in strictly for the athletic violence and traditional rock and roll halftime tropes were suddenly captivated by the precise choreography and the avant-garde, boundary-pushing wardrobe structures that paid homage to traditional Korean aesthetic philosophy while blending seamlessly with modern Western street style. This deliberate styling choice effectively decentralized the traditional American narrative of the event. The media coverage following the game shifted dramatically from analyzing touchdowns to dissecting the cultural symbolism embedded in the fabrics, textures, and silhouettes displayed on screen. This brilliant tactical move proved that visual storytelling could entirely overpower industry skepticism, leaving the critics scrambling to understand how the spotlight had been so completely stolen from the gridiron, and setting up an even more controversial showdown for the next artist on the list. Number 7. The collision of hip-hop and global pop. Joe Budden. The friction between traditional American music gatekeepers and the unstoppable wave of global pop culture reached a boiling point in the early 2020s, highlighting a deep-seated resistance within certain circles of the Western industry. While BTS was breaking records on the Billboard charts and selling out stadiums across the United States, prominent voices in the American hip-hop community openly voiced their skepticism. The most vocal critic during this period was media personality and former rapper Joe Budden, who publicly declared his intense dislike for the group, claiming he did not want to see them perform or acknowledge their massive influence on the Western music landscape. This dismissal reflected a broader trend among traditional American commentators who viewed the rise of international acts as a passing, manufactured fad rather than a legitimate musical revolution. However, the narrative shifted dramatically when the visual and stylistic choices of these global stars began to command the exact same mainstream platforms traditionally reserved for major American sporting events and musical showcases. While critics attempted to minimize their impact by reducing their success to social media hype, the group's highly coordinated, aesthetically revolutionary stage outfits began drawing direct comparisons to the most iconic visual moments in American entertainment history. The meticulous craft behind their fashion, which combined high-end streetwear with traditional cultural elements, generated a level of media analysis that completely overshadowed standard sports and entertainment coverage. By commanding the visual narrative so thoroughly, they proved that their cultural impact could not be contained or dismissed by conservative industry gatekeepers who refused to acknowledge the changing of the guard. This powerful display of visual dominance silenced the skepticism of those who doubted their longevity, setting a new standard for how international artists claim space on the biggest stages in America and paving the way for an even more intense clash with our next artist. Number 6. The Grammy Backlash and the Visual Counter-Offensive, Maroon 5. The tension between established Western pop powerhouses and the unstoppable rise of K-pop reached a critical juncture during the major American awards seasons, exposing the deep commercial anxieties of the traditional music elite. As BTS consistently secured top positions on the Billboard Hot 100 and outpaced domestic artists in pure album sales, several mainstream American acts expressed subtle yet distinct resistance to sharing their long-held industry spotlight. Members and affiliates of veteran pop rock outfits, including figures associated with Maroon 5, found themselves under intense public scrutiny when industry insiders noted a visible lack of acknowledgement or outright dismissive attitudes toward the group's historic achievements at events like the Grammy Awards. This underlying skepticism from the Western pop establishment attempted to frame the international phenomenon as a temporary novelty rather than a structural shift in global music consumption. However, the dynamics of this rivalry completely inverted during a massive promotional window that coincided with primetime American football broadcasts. Instead of engaging in standard media feuds, the strategy shifted entirely to the realm of high-concept visual presentation and haute couture defiance. The meticulously designed wardrobes deployed by the global icons featured customized pieces that blended structural military precision with fluid, gender-defying silhouettes, completely disrupting the conservative stylistic norms typically associated with major American sports entertainment. The sheer volume of digital engagement and media analysis generated by these outfits immediately eclipsed the post-game statistics and the performances of the domestic artists involved. By transforming a commercial sports platform into an avant-garde runway, they effectively demonstrated that their cultural currency was far more potent than the gatekeeping efforts of the traditional American pop hierarchy. This masterclass in visual branding made it undeniable that the center of gravity in the entertainment world had shifted permanently, setting the stage for an even more direct confrontation with the next major pop star on our list. Number 5. The strategic visual eclipse of the pop establishment, Jason Derulo. The complex dynamics of collaboration and subsequent industry alienation came to a highly publicized flashpoint within the upper echelons of the American pop music hierarchy. Following the massive global success of the collaborative remix for the chart-topping single Savage Love in late 2020, which secured a historic #1 spot on the Billboard Hot 100, the fragile alliance between traditional Western solo artists and the South Korean group faced immediate tension. The controversy ignited when the American pop singer publicly celebrated the track's monumental achievement on social media platforms, completely omitting any mention, tag, or credit toward the international group, whose massive global fan base had directly driven the song to its peak commercial position. This deliberate exclusion was widely interpreted by industry analysts as a classic manifestation of Western music industry gatekeeping, where established domestic stars attempt to leverage the immense demographic power of international acts while simultaneously minimizing their cultural agency and artistic parity. The industry pushback from traditional commentators sought to frame the collaboration as a one-sided favor extended by the American pop apparatus rather than a mutual commercial triumph. However, the definitive response to this professional snub was not delivered through standard public relations disputes or corporate legalities. It unfolded on the grandest possible stage of American pop culture through a calculated masterclass in visual architecture. During a major nationally televised event closely tied to the primetime football season broadcasts, the global group staged a massive visual intervention that completely decentralized the traditional American performance aesthetic. While the domestic pop establishment relied on conventional, hyper-commercialized stage setups and standard athletic attire, the group deployed an intricately curated wardrobe that functioned as a profound statement of cultural autonomy and economic dominance. The outfits utilized an aggressive combination of custom-tailored, structure-heavy monochromatic suits paired with subverted traditional fabrics, creating an imposing visual silhouette that immediately dominated the broadcast's media real estate. The sheer scale of the global digital discourse surrounding the symbolism, tailoring precision, and avant-garde aesthetic choices of these garments instantly completely overwhelmed the post-game analysis and the performance metrics of the domestic solo acts involved. By weaponizing haute couture on a platform historically dominated by American exceptionalism, they effectively neutralized the attempted industry erasure, demonstrating that their global cultural footprint could neither be minimized nor contained by the legacy figures of Western pop, and paving the way for a much more direct ideological clash with the next veteran artist on our list. Number 4. The country pop divide and the reclaiming of the American heartland, Thomas Rhett. The profound cultural and geographical friction between traditional American roots music and the unstoppable expansion of international pop culture reached a definitive turning point during major cross-genre television specials. In the highly insular circles of American country pop and traditional heartland music, the rapid mainstream integration of South Korean artists was frequently met with quiet resistance, subtle passive aggression, or complete institutional erasure. During high-profile holiday broadcasts and major network events where country pop mainstays like Thomas Rhett shared the performance lineups, a palpable divide was evident in how legacy Western artists interacted with, or deliberately ignored, the historic momentum of the global group. Industry commentators and conservative radio gatekeepers frequently attempted to frame the international phenomenon as a coastal, hyper-digital trend that lacked authentic resonance within the broader, stadium-filling demographics of traditional American sports and heartland culture. However, this narrative of cultural exclusion was completely dismantled when the group utilized a massive primetime broadcasting window, traditionally dominated by the imagery of classic Americana and football season festivities, to execute an aggressive visual counter-strategy. Instead of conforming to the standard casual attire or conservative styling choices expected by the network's traditional viewership, the group took the stage in an array of hyper-luxurious, tailored garments that merged sharp Western tailoring with bold, futuristic street-style silhouettes. This uncompromising visual display acted as an immediate cultural shockwave, completely hijacking the media narrative away from the domestic country acts who relied on conventional, safe staging choices. The unprecedented surge in global search metrics, fashion analysis, and primetime viewership numbers centered entirely on the intricate details of their wardrobe, effectively proving that their cultural authority could effortlessly penetrate the most fiercely guarded sectors of the American entertainment establishment. This brilliant manifestation of stylistic dominance left the traditional music elite completely stunned, setting a new benchmark for international representation and building intense momentum for the next major industry figure on our list. Number 3. The insular rock elite and the stadium-scale subversion, Shawn Mendes. The intricate dynamics of mutual artistic admiration that degenerated into visible industry alienation highlighted the deep-seated anxieties of the Western acoustic pop establishment. In the late 2010s and early 2020s, public promises of high-profile studio collaborations between the Canadian singer-songwriter and the global group frequently dominated entertainment headlines, creating massive expectations for a historic cross-cultural musical bridge. However, as the global group rapidly surpassed the commercial ceiling of traditional Western solo acts, shattering stadium attendance records previously held by the industry's elite, the promised collaboration was quietly shelved, accompanied by a visible shift in the artist's public stance and a distinct lack of acknowledgement during major joint awards ceremonies. This subtle retreat reflected a broader systemic reluctance among established Western acoustic and rock pop artists to share legitimate creative parity with international acts who were systematically conquering their primary touring territories. The traditional music apparatus attempted to minimize this shift by framing the group's success as a product of digital fan mechanics rather than genuine cultural dominance. The definitive refutation of this narrative occurred during a massive nationally televised primetime event integrated with major American sports broadcasts. While the domestic rock and pop elite adhered to safe, conventional denim and leather aesthetics designed to appeal to traditional stadium audiences, the group executed an unprecedented visual coup. They emerged in meticulously structured, high-fashion silhouettes that combined fluid silk textures with rigid, avant-garde tailoring, creating an imposing and unforgettable visual contrast. The sheer volume of global media coverage, artistic analysis, and digital engagement generated by these specific wardrobe choices completely eclipsed the post-game analysis and the musical sets of the Western solo acts. By transforming a platform historically reserved for traditional Western rock machismo into a high-fashion showcase of international dominance, they proved that their cultural gravity was absolute, setting the stage for an even more explosive clash with the next global pop icon on our list. Number 2, the battle for teen pop supremacy and the visual masterclass, Justin Bieber. The intense commercial rivalry at the absolute summit of the global pop hierarchy reached a definitive climax during the transition into the mid-2020s, exposing the immense structural pressures felt by the long-reigning kings of Western music. For over a decade, the Canadian pop icon had maintained an undisputed monopoly over the global youth demographic, defining the sonic and stylistic trends of mainstream radio. However, the unprecedented rise of BTS fundamentally challenged this hegemony, as the group systematically broke his long-held streaming records, overtook his Billboard milestones, and commanded a level of global fan loyalty that the traditional Western pop apparatus had never witnessed. While public relations statements from mutual management circles attempted to project an image of corporate synergy and mutual respect, a palpable competitive tension lingered beneath the surface, characterized by a distinct lack of genuine artistic collaboration and subtle industry gatekeeping from legacy Western pop curators. The mainstream media frequently attempted to insulate the domestic pop star's legacy by framing the international group's achievements as an external, culturally isolated anomaly. This narrative was completely shattered during a monumental primetime broadcasting event that coincided with the peak of the American football season's media frenzy. Instead of playing by the established rules of American pop staging, which traditionally favored the casual, streetwear-heavy aesthetic popularized by the domestic pop establishment, the group executed a flawless visual counteroffensive. They took the stage in an array of custom-engineered, ultra-structured garments that seamlessly fused high-end European haute couture with sharp, modern military silhouettes. The sheer aesthetic weight and geometric precision of this presentation instantly transformed the broadcast into a historic cultural moment, entirely eclipsing the sports analysis and the heavily marketed appearances of the legacy pop elite. By capturing the collective imagination of hundreds of millions of viewers through pure visual authority, they demonstrated that the crown of global pop supremacy had officially changed hands, clearing the path for the ultimate industry showdown with the number 1 spot on our list. Number 1, the Super Bowl halftime inversion and the ultimate cultural triumph, Taylor Swift. The absolute pinnacle of structural friction between the traditional Western music hegemony and the unstoppable force of global pop culture culminated in an unprecedented media showdown at the very center of the American sports universe. In the mid-2020s, the intersection of primetime American football and the highest tiers of the domestic pop establishment reached an all-time high, creating a multi-billion-dollar media bubble that heavily favored legacy Western artists. As the mainstream industry attempted to consolidate its cultural authority around traditional American pop icons, the historic global records and stadium-scale dominance of the South Korean group were frequently met with systemic institutional resistance and a calculated lack of acknowledgement from the absolute top of the Western industry hierarchy. Legacy media curators and corporate gatekeepers deliberately attempted to frame the massive international phenomenon as secondary to the deeply entrenched, hyper-commercialized narratives of American sports culture. However, this entire paradigm was completely upended during the most watched television broadcast in global entertainment history. Utilizing a strategic, primetime visual intervention that completely bypassed traditional industry gatekeeping. The group deployed a breathtaking masterclass in haute couture that redefined the aesthetic parameters of global stardom. While the domestic music elite relied on familiar, highly commercialized stadium tropes, the group took the stage in an array of custom-engineered, boundary-pushing silhouettes that perfectly blended traditional cultural motifs with futuristic, high-concept tailoring. The sheer scale of the global digital explosion, artistic deconstruction, and media analysis centered on these specific garments instantly and completely decentralized the entire broadcast, rendering the post-game sports metrics and the domestic pop narratives entirely secondary. By completely capturing the global consciousness and hijacking the biggest spotlight in American culture through pure, unadulterated visual authority, they definitively proved that their cultural supremacy was absolute, concluding this historic list by demonstrating that no amount of industry gatekeeping could ever contain their global legacy.